Mine is Jake Morrison, and I should have died 3 days ago. We all should have. 7 people crammed into a life raft built for 4. No food, barely any fresh water left. But here's the thing that's been eating at me. None of us are hungry. Hell, none of us have even mentioned food since day 2. All we can think about is drinking. Not the bottled water we're supposed to be rationing. That stuff tastes like metal now. Makes my stomach turn just thinking about it. No, what we're all craving is the ocean. That dark, endless Pacific that stretches in every direction. It calls to us, whispers promises of relief for this burning thirst that never goes away. I watch Marcus lean over the edge again, cupping seawater in his palms and drinking deeply. His face lights up like he just tasted the finest wine. The salt should be killing him, should be shutting down his kidneys, making him vomit blood. Instead, he looks healthier than when we first got on this raft. God, that hits the spot, he sighs, licking his lips. There's a white crust forming around his mouth from the salt, but his skin has this weird luminescence quality now, like he's glowing from the inside. Tom, our marine biologist, keeps staring at us with this look of growing horror. He's the only one who hasn't touched the seawater. Well, him and me. We've been fighting the urge, but it's getting harder every hour. This isn't natural, Tom whispers to me during what passes for night out here. People don't just stop needing fresh water. The human body doesn't work that way. I know he's right, but when I look at that dark water lapping against our raft, my mouth floods with saliva. It smells so good now, sweet almost, like it's exactly what I need to quench this thirst that's been burning in my throat for days. Carlos has been the worst. He's not even pretending anymore, just hanging his head over the side, drinking straight from the ocean like it's a water fountain. His body has swollen up like a balloon, not fat, but full, packed with fluid. When he moves, I can hear water sloshing around inside him. "You guys have to try this," he calls out, his voice thick and weird. "It's incredible, like finally getting a drink after being in the desert your whole life." The twins, Miguel and Manuel, nod in agreement. They've been taking turns submerging their entire heads, breathing in the water like it's air. When they come up, their eyes are different, larger, and there's something moving under their skin. Little ripples and bulges that shouldn't be there. Tom grabs my arm, fingers digging in hard. "Jake, I need to tell you something. I've been testing the water." He pulls out a small vial from his emergency kit. The salinity is wrong, way wrong, and there's something else in it. What kind of something? Microscopic organisms, millions of them per drop. They're not like anything I've ever seen. They move with purpose, like they're intelligent. That's when Carlos starts laughing. A sound too loud, too joyful for our situation. He's doubled over, arms wrapped around his distended belly, and water is literally streaming from his pores. Not sweat. This stuff is clear and thick, with the same consistency as the ocean around us. "I can feel them," he giggles, "swimming around inside me. They're so happy, so grateful. They've been waiting so long for someone to drink them in." Tom's face goes white. "Jake, we need to get off this raft now." But it's too late. The twins start convulsing, their bodies jerking and twisting as something moves beneath their skin. Their flesh ripples like they're a fish swimming just under the surface. And Miguel, Jesus, Miguel's stomach suddenly distends like he's 9 months pregnant. "It's beautiful," he whispers, tears streaming down his face. They're going to be born through us. We're going to give them life. That's when I understand. The organisms in the water, they're not just feeding on us. They're using us as incubators, growing inside us, preparing for some kind of reproductive cycle. And we're helping them. We can't stop ourselves from helping them. The thirst hits me like a sledgehammer. My throat feels like sandpaper. My lips crack and bleed. The fresh water bottles sitting right next to me might as well be poison. All I want, all I need, is that beautiful, dark ocean water that's been calling to me for days. I reach over the side, cup my hands, and bring the water to my lips. It tastes like heaven. Cool and sweet and perfect. I can feel it flowing through my body, filling empty spaces I didn't know existed. And with it come the passengers, tiny, eager things that tickle as they swim through my bloodstream. "Welcome," they seem to whisper. "We've been so lonely." Within hours, my body starts to change, swell, transform. I can feel them growing inside me, multiplying, preparing for their grand exit. Tom watches in horror as one by one we become something else, something that serves their purpose. Carlos goes first. His body can't contain them anymore, and he splits open like an overripe fruit. But there's no blood, no gore. Just clear, sweet water and millions of tiny, glowing organisms that spill into the ocean like living stars. He's smiling. We're all smiling. The twins follow, then Marcus. Each time, the water around our raft glows brighter as billions of new organisms join their family in the sea. They've been down there for eons, waiting for the right conditions, the right hosts, the right moment to spread. Tom makes one last desperate attempt to use the emergency radio, but his hands are shaking too badly to work the controls. The thirst has finally gotten to him too. I watch his resolve crumble as he stares at the water, then at the useless freshwater supplies. "I'm sorry," he whispers, then leans over the edge to drink. Now it's my turn. My body is so full I can barely move. My skin is stretched tight, translucent. I can see them swimming inside me, thousands of tiny lights preparing for their moment of freedom. It doesn't hurt. It feels purposeful, like I'm finally doing something important with my life. As I feel my skin beginning to split, I realize the truth that Tom never figured out. This wasn't random. The organisms didn't just happen to be in this part of the ocean. They were waiting for us. They guided our ship here, made sure we'd crash, made sure we'd end up in this raft with limited supplies. They've been planning this for years, maybe decades, learning about human biology, figuring out exactly how to make us crave what we should fear. And now they're ready for phase 2. I can see lights on the horizon, ships, rescue vessels drawn by our emergency beacon that finally activated after days of being mysteriously broken. They'll find our empty raft, our abandoned supplies. They'll taste the water to see if it's contaminated. And then they'll drink. Phase 2 begins now. My name is Kevin Marsh, and I found paradise. Or at least, That's what I thought when Rebecca and I first dragged ourselves onto that pink sandy beach. We'd been swimming for over 12 hours after our Cessna went down. My legs were cramping, my waterlogged clothes were dragging me under, and I was maybe 20 minutes from just giving up and letting the Pacific take me. Then, this island appeared out of nowhere, a small, perfect circle of land that definitely wasn't on any of our charts. "Thank God," Rebecca gasped as we crawled onto the shore. "I don't think I had another stroke left in me." The beach was incredible. The sand was soft as silk, warm to the touch, and it molded perfectly to our bodies as we collapsed. It was like lying on the world's most expensive memory foam mattress. Even the color was beautiful, a soft pink with white swirls that caught the sunlight. "This stuff is amazing," I said, running my fingers through it. The sand clung to my skin like powder, leaving faint marks. "It's so fine, like baby powder." Rebecca was already exploring the center of the island, where a smooth black formation rose about 30 feet into the air. It wasn't really rock, more like polished stone that radiated heat. Around its base were dozens of perfectly circular pools filled with clear, warm liquid. "Kevin, come look at this," she called. "I think we hit the jackpot." The pools were filled with something that looked like spring water, but thicker. It had no smell, and when I dipped my finger in, it felt almost oily. But it was warm and clear, and after 12 hours in salt water, the idea of fresh water was like a miracle. "Should we drink it?" "Let's wait until morning," I said, though part of me was already imagining how good it would taste. "Set up camp, get some rest, then figure out our next move." That night was the best sleep I'd had in years. The pink sand molded perfectly to my body, creating a custom-fitted bed that was more comfortable than anything I'd ever experienced. The warmth radiating from beneath kept us perfectly comfortable, and the gentle sounds of waves lapping against the shore were like nature's own white noise machine. But I kept having the strangest dreams. I dreamed I was floating in warm water, surrounded by something massive and alive, something that was aware of me, watching me, caring for me like a mother watching over her child. When I woke up, I was sunk deep into the sand. Not like I'd been tossing and turning. The sand had actually molded around me during the night, creating a perfect body-shaped depression several inches deep. My handprints from yesterday were still there, preserved exactly as I'd left them. "Rebecca, look at this," I called, but she was already up, studying something at the base of the black formation. "Kevin, these pools, they're not random." Her voice was excited. "They're organized, perfectly spaced. And look, they're all exactly the same size, like they were designed." I joined her, and she was right. The pools formed neat rows around the base of the formation, each one precisely the same distance from its neighbors. It was too perfect to be natural. That's when I noticed the pink sand was behaving strangely. Where we'd walked yesterday, our footprints were still perfectly preserved. Where we'd sat, the impressions remained exactly as we'd left them. The sand wasn't just soft, it was actively maintaining the shapes we'd made. "It's like it's alive," Rebecca whispered. Throughout the second day, we explored every inch of our small island. It was maybe 200 yards across at its widest point, with the pink beach surrounding the central formation in a perfect oval. The more I studied it, the more artificial it seemed. Too symmetrical, too perfectly designed for human comfort. But I was feeling better than I had in years. My skin had taken on a healthy glow, my energy was through the roof,
and that nagging back pain I'd had for months was completely gone. The pink sand that clung to our skin seemed to be having some kind of therapeutic effect. "We should probably try to signal for rescue," Rebecca said on the third day, but neither of us made any real effort. Why would we want to leave paradise? The pools of warm liquid were irresistible now. We'd started drinking from them on day 2, and the stuff was incredible. It didn't just quench our thirst, it satisfied something deeper, some need I hadn't even realized I had. My body felt stronger, more vital, like every cell was being nourished in a way regular water never could. Rebecca felt it too. Her hair was shinier, her eyes brighter. The cuts and scrapes from our plane crash were healing at an impossible rate. "I feel like I could live here forever," she said, lying spread eagle on the pink sand that molded perfectly to her body. Why would anyone want to go back to that world of concrete and pollution when you could have this? I agreed completely. Civilization seemed like a distant nightmare compared to this perfect island that catered to our every need. The sand that adjusted to our comfort, the pools that provided exactly the nourishment we craved, the formation that gave us shade and warmth as needed. It wasn't until the 4th night that I realized we were in trouble. I woke up around midnight with the strangest sensation, like the ground beneath me was moving. Not earthquake movement, but something organic, rhythmic, like breathing. I pressed my ear to the pink sand and listened. Deep below, I could hear something massive moving. Something with a heartbeat that shook the entire island with each pulse. "Rebecca," I whispered, but she was sleeping deeply, sunk so far into the sand that only her face was visible above the surface. The pink powder had crept up around her body like quicksand, but she looked peaceful, content. That's when I noticed my own situation. I was embedded in the sand up to my chest. When had that happened? I'd just laid down for a nap, but now I was trapped in a body-shaped depression that seemed to be slowly, gently pulling me deeper. I tried to sit up, but the sand held me like cement. Not violent or aggressive, just firm, insistent, like it didn't want me to leave. The heartbeat below grew stronger, and with growing horror, I realized what we'd been doing. The pools of liquid we'd been drinking, they weren't spring water. They were digestive juices. The pink sand that had been clinging to our skin wasn't therapeutic. It was breaking us down, preparing us. The island wasn't caring for us. It was marinating us. "Rebecca!" I called, fighting against the sand that held me. "Rebecca, wake up!" But she was already too deep. The pink sand had covered her up to her neck, and she was still smiling in her sleep. As I watched, her skin began to take on a translucent quality, like she was dissolving from the inside out. I managed to work one arm free and felt around the depression that held me. The sand wasn't sand at all. It was organic, flesh-like, and it was warm with more than just absorbed sunlight. It was warm with body heat, the body heat of something unimaginably massive. The black formation in the center wasn't a rock. It was a tooth, a massive, polished tooth rising from the tongue of something so large that what I'd thought was an island was just a tiny portion of its mouth. We'd been sitting on this thing's tongue for 4 days, drinking its saliva, letting its digestive juices soak into our skin. And now, as it began to wake up from whatever eons-long sleep it had been in, it was ready to feed. I felt myself sinking deeper as the tongue began to curl slightly at the edges. The pools of liquid bubbled and overflowed as massive salivary glands kicked into high gear. In the distance, I could see the edge of the island beginning to rise, the creature's lips preparing to close. Rebecca disappeared completely beneath the surface, still smiling, still at peace. The digestive process had advanced too far. She probably didn't even realize what was happening. I had maybe minutes before the same thing happened to me. The pink flesh that I'd mistaken for sand was slowly dissolving me, turning me into something this ancient creature could absorb and process. I could feel myself becoming part of it, my consciousness starting to merge with something vast and patient and eternally hungry. But here's the part that really gets me, the part that keeps me awake at night even now. I didn't want to fight it anymore. As the tongue began to curl and the mouth prepared to close, all I could think about was how perfect this was. How this creature had been alone for so long, waiting in the deep ocean for someone to find it, to feed it, to love it. And we had found it. We had given it exactly what it needed.
As the last of my individual consciousness dissolved into the creature's ancient mind, I finally understood the truth. We weren't the first. This thing had been calling to planes and ships for decades, causing them to crash in just the right spot, creating its little paradise island to trap survivors who thought they'd been saved. And somewhere in the vast network of its neural pathways, I could sense them. Hundreds of other survivors who had found this same island, who had drunk from these same pools, who had let themselves be slowly, peacefully dissolved and absorbed. We were all still here in a way, part of something larger than ourselves, part of something that was finally, after eons of waiting, ready to reproduce, ready to birth a new generation of island-sized predators into the ocean. The process had already begun. Deep in the creature's belly, I could feel new life stirring. Dozens of offspring, each one destined to grow into their own floating paradise, their own perfect trap for the next group of survivors who thought they'd been saved. We hadn't found paradise. We had become it. My name is Derek Chen, and I made the worst mistake of my life when I decided to explore that cave. We were 40 feet down in a submerged limestone cavern, mapping an underwater cave system that had never been properly documented. The four of us, me, Maya, Carlos, and Dr. Janet Walsh, had been diving together for years. We knew what we were doing, had all the right equipment, followed every safety protocol. None of it mattered. The rockfall happened without warning. One moment we were swimming through a beautiful cathedral-sized chamber, our lights illuminating ancient formations, and the next moment the entrance was sealed behind a wall of stone. Just like that, we were trapped 40 feet underwater with maybe an hour of air remaining. That's when the tapping started. Tap, tap. "That's got to be the surface team," Maya said, her voice muffled by the breathing apparatus. "They saw our bubbles stop coming up." The sound was coming from beyond the rock pile that blocked our exit. Methodical hammering, like someone trying to break through with tools. It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard, because it meant rescue was coming. Tap, tap. "They're making progress," Carlos said, swimming closer to the blocked entrance. "Sounds like they're using chisels." Dr. Walsh floated silently behind us. She was a marine archaeologist who'd joined our dive to document any interesting formations. Professional diver, but not as experienced in cave systems as the rest of us. I figured the claustrophobic situation was getting to her. Tap, tap. The sound was getting louder, more urgent. Our rescue team was working fast, trying to reach us before our air ran out. I checked my dive computer. 37 minutes remaining. Tight, but doable if they could break through soon. "Maya, try the emergency beacon again," I said. She activated the underwater distress signal, and we waited. The tapping continued, steady and reassuring. Help was coming. We just had to stay calm and conserve air. Tap, tap. That's when I started paying closer attention to the sound. Something about it was off. The echo was wrong, too hollow, too metallic. And the rhythm was too perfect, too mechanical. "Carlos," I said, "where exactly is that sound coming from?" He swam closer to the rock pile, pressing his ear to one of the larger stones. "It's definitely coming from the other side, but—" He paused, frowning. "It doesn't sound like it's coming from outside the cave. It sounds like it's coming from deeper in the system." My blood went cold. The cave system behind us was unmapped, unexplored. No one from the surface team would be working from that direction. Tap, tap. I turned to check on Dr. Walsh and got the shock of my life. She wasn't behind us anymore. She was at the back of the cavern, near the narrow tunnel that led deeper into the cave system. And she was holding something in her hand. A small geological hammer. Part of her archaeological toolkit. Tap, tap, tap. Janet was making the sound. She was floating near the back wall of the cavern, methodically tapping her hammer against her own oxygen tank. The metallic ringing echoed through the water-filled chamber, creating the exact sound we'd been hearing. "Janet, what the hell are you doing?" Carlos started swimming toward her. That's when she turned around. Her eyes were completely black. Not the pupils, the entire eyes, like someone had filled them with ink. And she was smiling, but it wasn't Janet's smile. It was something else wearing her face. Tap, tap, tap. She continued her rhythmic hammering, each strike creating a small dent in her tank. I realized with growing horror that she was trying to rupture her own air supply. "She's infected with something," Maya said, her voice tight with panic. "Some kind of parasite." My dive light started to flicker. The powerful LED began to dim, then cut out entirely. In the span of seconds, I was plunged into absolute darkness. Tap, tap, tap. Maya's light went next, then Carlos's. Soon we were floating in complete blackness, 40 feet underwater, trapped in a sealed cave with something that was definitely not Janet anymore. But the tapping didn't stop. If anything, it got louder, more urgent, and I could hear her moving through the water, swimming closer to us in the dark. Tap, tap. I fumbled for my emergency light, a small backup that should have enough battery for at least a few minutes. When it finally flickered on, I immediately wished it hadn't. Janet was floating right in front of me, maybe 3 feet away. Her tank was leaking a steady stream of bubbles where she damaged it, and her hammer was raised for another strike. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what I could see moving under her skin. Dark shapes writhing beneath the surface, like eels swimming through her bloodstream. Her neck was distended, pulsing with whatever was living inside her. And from her equipment belt hung dozens of small dark objects that pulsed with their own faint bioluminescence. The parasites, Maya breathed. They're using her to spread. I understood the strategy now. The creature didn't want to kill Janet quickly. It wanted her to damage her air supply in an enclosed space, releasing the parasites into the water where the rest of us would have to breathe them in. The cave had become a perfect breeding chamber. Tap, tap, tap. Janet brought the hammer down again, this time creating a larger hole in her tank. Air rushed out faster now, and with it came some of those dark, pulsing objects from her equipment belt. They drifted through the water like tiny jellyfish, seeking new hosts. I started swimming toward the blocked entrance, knowing it was hopeless, but unable to just float there and wait for infection. Behind me, Janet's hammering continued, each strike releasing more parasites into our limited water supply. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was changing now, getting more frantic. I realized that Janet wasn't just trying to breach her own tank anymore. She was trying to damage ours too. I could hear her moving through the water, the hammer striking against different surfaces. "She's behind you," Carlos warned, and I spun around to see Janet approaching with the hammer raised. Those black eyes reflected my failing light like a deep-sea creature. I dodged, but in the enclosed space of the flooded cave, there wasn't far to go. Janet's hammer caught the side of my tank, creating a small dent but not penetrating. Tap, tap, tap. That's when I heard something that made my blood freeze. A new tapping sound coming from Carlos's direction. In the dying light of my emergency beam, I could see Carlos floating motionless, his own hammer in his hand, striking rhythmically against his tank. His eyes had gone completely black. The parasites worked fast. Tap, 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 tap. Two sources now, working in concert. Maya was next. I could see the moment of infection as one of those dark, pulsing objects made contact with her skin. Her body went rigid, then relaxed. Then she reached for her own tools with a peaceful smile spreading across her face. Tap, 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 tap. Three sources now. And I was running out of air, running out of light, running out of hope. That's when I felt something brush against my leg. One of the pulsing objects working its way toward an opening in my wetsuit. It was warm against my skin, and as it burrowed in, I felt an immediate sense of calm wash over me. The panic faded, the claustrophobia disappeared. Even the darkness didn't seem frightening anymore. I realized I was still holding a dive weight, a small, dense piece of equipment that would make a perfect tool for tapping. My tank was right there, easily accessible, and the sound it would make, that beautiful rhythmic percussion that would help call others to this perfect breeding ground. Tap, 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 tap. 4 sources now. Perfect harmony. The surface team found us 3 days later when they finally managed to cut through the rockfall. 4 divers floating peacefully in the water-filled cave, their air tanks mysteriously empty.
The official report listed it as equipment failure, a tragic accident where all 4 divers had somehow damaged their breathing apparatus. But I'm not dead. None of us are. We're something else now, something that serves a different purpose. The parasites didn't kill us. They transformed us, made us part of something larger, something that's been waiting in these deep caves for centuries, maybe millennia. And we're not alone down here. There are others, dozens of other accident victims who've been integrated into the collective. Divers who went missing over the years, spelunkers who never returned, researchers who vanished during underwater expeditions.
We're all still here, in the network of flooded caves that extends far deeper than any map shows. And we're all tapping, always tapping, creating the sound that draws new victims down to these depths. The beautiful thing is, we remember everything. Every thought, every memory, every emotion from our human lives. But now we understand that those lives were incomplete. We were just individual cells, isolated and purposeless. Now we're part of something magnificent, a collective intelligence that spans the entire ocean floor. And the best part? We're growing. Every few months, new accidents bring us fresh recruits, new minds to add to the network, new voices to join the tapping chorus that echoes through the deep places where surface dwellers fear to go. Right now, as I write this, I can feel them up there. Another dive team exploring the same cave system where we died. They can hear the tapping, and they think it's rescue coming for them. They have no idea how right they are.